Welcome back to Stacy So and So. Thank you for joining me again this week. As promised, I will be sewing the third style of apron that I've been talking about. So far, I know you guys have seen me do the Mary Mallory crisscross back apron. Last week, I did the smock style apron for my sewing, which I'm really glad that I did. It's been doing exactly what I was hoping it would. It was keeping me from being covered in fuzz and thread. Now, today's apron is going to be what a lot of people refer to as a cobbler style apron. This was a PDF that I purchased and downloaded, I think from Etsy. I'll find the link and I'll include it below in case you decide you want to make one. They call it, however, the super simple smock apron with pockets. And yes, it is a very simple pattern. There's not a lot of pieces to put together, definitely not complicated. The instructions are very straightforward. But when have I ever done anything just simple? I always have to throw something in the mix, and I did this time too. So, but before I get there, I want to read this paragraph to you. This is on the page where it tells you like all the things that you're going to need to make it, how much fabric and stuff. It says, the super simple smock apron, a staple of every kitchen in the 1960s. During this wave of the feminist movement, women started to reject aprons as symbols of women's domesticity. Enter the smock or cobbler apron, a style traditionally worn by men in trades, a less feminine choice, often embroidered with ironic or sarcastic statements. This is a traditional pullover style apron with huge pockets and can be trimmed in coordinating bias binding. So I just like that. I mean, I'm trying to imagine like what kind of like sarcastic things they would have had printed on their apron. I love the idea. Kind of makes me laugh. So I did do a couple of things that are not simple. For instance, I'm not going to be just pulling out a couple yards of fabric. I've decided that I want to make the main part of the apron out of upcycled denim. So I will show you that. And I also decided to make my own bias binding. So let me kind of go over everything that we'll be using for this project, and then we will get started. First things first was to find a pair of jeans that I purchased at our local Heart and Hand, our local thrift store, that I knew would provide enough width, enough fabric. So I just to kind of guess, I just folded this over knowing that I'm going to still have some excess. And then here's the first part of the PDF pattern. And I do believe I'm going to have plenty of fabric to make the main bodice part out of. And I think when I take them apart, I am going to just split up the inside of the crotch so that then I open it up this way. And so, yeah, there will be a seam, but with the dark denim, it's not as noticeable. And I think it'll still look good. So this is going to be, hopefully, works out. This is going to be the main part of the fabric for the apron. Then, for the pocket that goes across the bottom of the apron, I have decided I am going to use, I have just enough of this left over to do the pocket. Actually, I have more than enough because this is doubled over, but so I'm going to do sunflowers for the pocket on the front. And then also, these are the side tabs that you use to make for ties to tie the apron. And so I already have a couple of pieces of fabric that are the perfect length. This was just leftover from another project I did. It was actually the first Mary Mallory apron you saw me make. This is fabric that was left over. So that's going to be perfect because we need to cut ties for both. And then I'll still have some extra because you'll need 2 ties on either side. But so that's the plan so far. The other thing I'm thinking about, I haven't decided if I'm going to do it or not. I love pom-poms, and they just kind of give that like 50s, 60s vibe. I think I'm going to put a row of red pom-poms across the top of the pocket. Now, I did take time to make my own bias tape. Yes, I could have ordered some. I could have went out and bought some, but I had a whole bunch of this bandana fabric left over from I don't even know what project a few years back. And I wasn't using it for anything. So I decided it was the perfect time to make bias binding. So this is the piece I made to go around the neck, which is a bit longer than I'll probably need. But so I made that, and then I made a whole bunch more to outline the entire bodice of the apron. Like so. So hopefully all goes well. This is the plan so far. So now it is time to get started. First things first, I gotta pick those jeans apart. Now that I have the jeans completely picked apart, cut apart, we're now ready to lay the pattern. So this is actually the side seam of the jean, but I'm going to use that as my center. Let me press that open a little bit. Okay. There we go. Okay. It helps because I do have this center line coming down the middle of the pattern piece. Let me grab a couple pins. Now I'm going to do the same to the front and the back. We'll just make sure the seam goes straight down the center of the apron, because I think that will look better than if it's kind of offset or just random. So we're going to just pin on either side of that seam, because trying to get through it is rather difficult. It's pretty thick. Okay, there we go. So now it goes straight down the center. So I'll pin the rest of this on and then cut it out. Okay. This is one side cut out. I still will have to do the other. One thing I'm noticing is this is definitely going to be a smaller size. So I would say that the initial pattern would probably fit anyone between like an extra small to a size medium. I typically wear a large or extra large. I tried it on, and I held it up to me. And I think if I were going to make it for myself, I would probably extend it on each side probably about an inch on either side. And that would definitely give me the coverage that I'd be looking for in an apron. But this one isn't for me. So that's one way to keep me from trying to keep everything that I make. If I make it in a size I can't wear, I can't keep it. Okay, so have the pockets, front pocket pinned in place. The trim is attached to it, so I'm going to give it a very narrow, a little stitch all the way around, just as close to the edge as possible to hold it in place, because all of the raw edges are going to be covered with the bias tape. The other thing I'm going to do, as opposed to having just one big pocket, I will stitch right down the center where that seam is, and that way you have two large pockets. Once I do that, all I need to do is match up. There we go. Front to back, stitch across here, and then we'll be ready to do the bias tape all the way around. All right, so the pocket has been attached, and I decided to use red thread and just seamed right down the middle, so you have two nice sized pockets. And then I went ahead and just pinned on the bias tape. I really like the look of the bandana, the red bandana material against the denim. I had seamed it at the shoulders at 5/8 with 5/8 of an inch, and then I followed up with just taking the peeking shears to it so it will cut back on any fraying. So now I'm just going to sew that on and then use the rest of my bias tape and go all the way around the edge. And here we are. We're getting really close to being done. I'm so glad that I took time to make the custom bias tape. Every time I look at it, I am just really pleased with how the bandana looks, with not just the denim, but also the sunflowers. So it was very easy to make and to just attach all the way around. Here's the back. Now, the next thing that we need to do, I have not decided if I'm going to do any more embellishing on this or not, but the next thing that we need to do, we'll move this up, is make the ties for the sides of the apron. So what it has us doing is, oh, this will be simple. Okay, so I want you to know I did cut my ties a little bit longer, like maybe an extra ½ inch or so longer than the pattern piece. I just felt like they needed to be a little bit longer. So it has us, you're going to press in a narrow hem on the sides, on the bottom, and then once you do that, you're going to then fold it in half so you can see it on here. So they have it folded in and pressed on 3 sides, and then they fold it in half, and then they just top stitch all the way around. And so that's the point. That's this part right up here. Okay. All right. So let me pull the iron out and make some side ties. And it is done. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I got the little ties made and attached on the side. And I also added a sweet little detail to the neckline, which I think really kind of helps pull it all together. There's one thing I will say about the ties on the side. They look very similar to the bias binding I made. So in a way, I wonder if I could have just made some bias binding out of the sunflower fabric and then just top stitch it all the way around, and I think it would have looked the same. It might have saved my fingers. I steamed myself a couple of times trying to get those ties made, but overall, I have to say the pattern is very simple. It's very easy to follow, and I like it. I like the style. I think I'm going to make one for myself to have as an alternative to the smock that I made myself. I am going to have to make it bigger. The pattern is definitely, I would say, a small medium, and I'm more of a large, extra large, especially like right here. So I'm going to have to definitely expand the pattern. If that's something that you would like to see me do, just leave me a message in the comments, and I'm happy to do a video on how I increase the size of the pattern so that it fits, you know, a large medium or a large extra large. So I guess it's now time for me to show you the final results. But before I go, let me just say thank you again for being here. And until next week, happy sewing.